Hey y'all, Big Tim here. Thanks for tuning in for the 6th edition of The Truth Behind the Trophies. This one comes to you from Lake Cumberland, 2011. Well, I had always enjoyed fishing Lake Cumberland. I fished it with my club and, various tournaments. Dad and I always fished the Saturday after Thanksgiving tournament there together. But we'd never done great. We'd caught a few fish here and there, but this time around was pretty special. The marina that I bought my boat from actually put together a little tournament circuit, and they really had some really good locations and dates and everything else. They were going to Cumberland, they were going to Green River Lake, they were going to go to Barron, they were going to go to Harrington, and they were going to go to the river. And, we were real excited about it. So we thought we'd give it a shot. This is an opportunity for Dad and I to fish together, so that's always a good time. So their first tournament that they were having was Lake Cumberland. It was at the end of March. I don't remember the exact dates because I can't find any record of the tournament. But it was an Anglers Outpost tournament. And I believe it was the end of March, 2011. And they had probably about 20 boats, I guess, 25, and some really good fishermen for Lake Cumberland. And, Dad and I, for Cumberland, we were just going to have fun. But at the same time, we're going to do everything we can to win. So we took 2 days to go practice. We went down on, tournament was Saturday, so we went down on Thursday, and we practiced up lake on Thursday. And we caught a couple fish, but nothing exciting. And nothing like a pattern. We'd catch one here, catch one there. Nothing to, establish a pattern for the tournament. So on Friday, we stayed overnight. And of course, Friday morning we woke up and went and practiced down lake. We put in Beaver Creek. And I had learned to like beaver a lot. I've put in, that's one of the reasons I love Lake Cumberland. I put in, and I'm guessing about 15, 16 different ramps down there. I've learned a lot of different places around the whole lake. And there's still a lot of places I haven't been to. The lake is just so big. But that's one of the reasons I love it is because, there's a lot of different places you can go. So we put in at Beaver Creek and practiced down that way. And we had a few places. We had caught a few fish, but it's still nothing to establish anything. Until the very end of the day, we were back in the creek and caught 2 fish real quick on a crankbait. We really didn't have much to go with. We had a couple of fish that we caught on a crankbait there at the very end. And I just folded everything up and said, that's it, we're done practicing. This is our spot. I don't know, I just had a feeling about it. And pretty concrete feeling. So the next day we wake up, we launch the boats, we run all the way down from Conley Bottoms to Beaver Creek. That's kind of a long run, especially when it's kind of cold out. It takes you probably about 40 minutes, and then you got to go through an idle zone, and takes you a while. The whole time I'm thinking, man, I'm hoping we can catch them. You get jittery for the tournament. We finally get to our spot, and there's a lot of people around, but nobody's really sitting exactly on our spot. I mean, they're pretty close, but not exactly on our spot. So we pull up there, and I'm throwing a little crankbait. I'll show you the crankbait here in just a minute. But catch a fish. Nice keeper. Throw back in there. Catch another nice keeper fish. Now, granted, they're not giants. Largemouth have to be 15 inches to keep at Cumberland. These were probably about 16.5 inches, but, good quality tournament fish. And before we knew it, we had 4 good keepers. And couldn't get bit on a jig. I threw that in there. There was a lot of things I threw in there. Spinnerbait, a lot of other things. Just they wanted this particular crankbait. They were eating it really good. So then there was another little spot that we had found out toward the mouth of the creek that had red rock. And I always love fishing red rock down there. For some reason, I equated the red rock with clay. And obviously it is made with some clay. And, you know, a lot of times crayfish love to be around clay. So the smallmouth will be there. Sure enough, anytime I find red rock, you know, anywhere from bowling ball size to a little bigger, you'll generally find smallmouth there, maybe some Kentuckys. And sure enough, we had our little red clay bank, and we caught at least one smallmouth off of it, and I think we lost two more. And had another non-keeper. Keeper smallmouth have to be 18 inches at Cumberland, so that was a big plus. We had a couple of them that were like 16 and a half, 17 inches, but we did have one that was 18 and a half inches, so that was nice. We ended up going back, and I'm thinking to myself, we've got a pretty good bag, but not great. I'm thinking we've got about 10 or 11 pounds. So we go to weigh in, and we have 12 and a half something pounds. I remember it was 12, and I want to say it was like a half. And we just barely ended up winning that tournament. Like I said, there were some good Lake Cumberland guys there. Some locals and some really good fishermen. And so it really felt awesome for Dad and I to come away with that win. Now, what I didn't know is that after we weighed in and everything else, Dad came to me and said, I knew you were going to win that tournament. Now, I didn't know what he meant when he said I knew that I was going to win the tournament. So I got to ask him, I said, this is a team deal. And he said, well, you know, I woke up this morning, and Dad always says a prayer every morning, and, you know, ask for our safety and take care of us, make sure we don't do anything stupid and hurt ourselves. After the prayer, he said this feeling just came over him. He said he knew that I was going to catch the fish to win the tournament. Now, don't get me wrong, Dad did catch a couple fish, but I think we called his fish out. I mean, we caught more keepers than the 5 that we weighed in. We did call a few times. But what's real important to me is on this tournament was the fact that it was the first time that I'd ever won a tournament on something other than a baby brush hog or topwater. And here it is. The old crankbait. This is a bomber fat-free shad. And I got the color from a friend of mine. This is called Dance's Citrus Shad. And a friend of mine had been throwing this on Green River and catching a bunch of fish, and kind of turned me on to it. I figured it would work for Cumberland. Great little bait. So one of the things that I knew about that was the fact that the water was 710 feet. And this is at the time when they had been working on the dam. So they had been keeping the water level down probably about 685, if I'm not mistaken. Can't remember exactly. But when they were working on the dam, they had the water sucked down way low. And might even been lower than that. So it allowed the trees to grow up. And one of the things was that you would run this little bait off a point and through those trees. And when you'd feel it coming through the trees, all of a sudden it would just load up and you would have a fish on. So it was really fun. You know, you could lose a couple baits, but it was real important. So 2 weeks after that, I have a Bass Nation tournament on Barren River Lake. And then the following day, I'm going to roll over and fish a KBF tournament at Cumberland. So I did fish the Bass Nation tournament at Barren, and I was horrible. I don't know that I weighed a fish. I didn't even bother to look it up because I know it was just a really bad tournament for me. I really think that I zeroed. And it was just a bad trip, just a bad tournament. But, you know, riding with Joey, you know, Joey and I were riding from Barren over to Cumberland. And, you know, everything gets better. You know, Joey and I always have such a good time when we travel together. And so going over to Cumberland, I was more at ease. And even though I didn't have any practice, I kind of knew what I was going to do. I was going to run down to that point where we caught them 2 weeks prior and hope for the best. And sure enough, that's what I did. We loaded up, launched from Conley again, ran all the way down to Beaver. And when I got there, within 3 or 4 casts, I had one. And I had a limit inside of an hour, I think. Again, all on the crankbait. Now the difference was the water level had dropped. So instead of using the Fat-Free Shad Junior, I dropped down to the fingerling, which is one size smaller. I want to say it's a BDF 5, whereas I had been using a BDF 6. But I did drop down one size, and that really helped because the water had dropped down to 700 feet, not 710. So as you're cranking that bait through there, like I said, you could feel the trees. And when it would come through the trees, it would just all of a sudden it would load up and you would be hooked up. It was just a lot of fun. Like I said, we had our limit. My co-angler had 2 or 3. And can't remember how he did. But anyway, we left the spot to let it rest. And we were going to come back to it 15, 20 minutes later, half hour, whatever. So when we left and then came back, we didn't have any success at the other spots we tried. When we got back to the point we're casting in there, we're noticing as we're reeling our crankbait through there, we're not feeling the trees anymore. So, I mean, I maneuvered all around the point. Could not find these trees anywhere. I thought, what is the deal here? These trees didn't evaporate. So the only thing we could figure was what we thought were trees were actually fish stacked in there. They were stacked in so much that the crankbait was going over top of the backs of the fish. It was incredible. Because like I said, there were no trees on the second pass through. Of course, we didn't catch any fish anymore either. We did, however, run back out to my red rock spot. Got another big old smallmouth. I think this one was a 19.5. Nice, big, kicker little smallmouth. And that helped the bag. So this time when I weighed in, my fish weighed 13.15, which is not a great weight, but back then for Cumberland, that was pretty good. You know, nowadays it's taking 17 to 20 pounds. But back then, you know, that was a pretty good weight. And there was 2 other things that really fired me up about it. First off, like I said, it was the first time I'd won a tournament on something other than a topwater or baby brush hog. To catch them on a crankbait, anybody that knows me knows I really didn't throw crankbaits much. So to catch them on a crankbait was huge. The other thing that was important for me was this was the first time I'd ever won a tournament by more than just a couple ounces. In fact, I had 13 pounds. I think second place had 8.5 or 9. Beat them by a couple pounds. So that was huge. I was having a great day. And to not have any practice on Cumberland for 2 weeks, that meant a lot too. The funny thing is that spot always does pretty well for me. I can always count on 1 or 2 fish, whether it's in the spring, whether it's in the fall. But I've never caught them like that there since. And I try it almost every time I go. Well, who wouldn't, right? But it's never really produced like that again. But it sure was fun for those 2 weeks. I should say 3 weeks. So I won 2 tournaments in the span of 3 weeks on one spot at Lake Cumberland. So that was huge. And of course, like I said, I don't have trophy or pictures of that, unfortunately. But it was a great trip. Tune in next week. We're coming to you from Maysville, Kentucky, site of the Kentucky Bass Nation State Championship. That was a fun tournament too. Tune in and hope you enjoyed this one. We'll see you next week.